This is Marketing Uncomplicated. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming back to the show. I have Stephanie Cord-Miller here. Stephanie helps business owners transform their dreams into attainable goals so they can live their best lives and build sustainable businesses. This is very interesting because on one hand, I'm a marketer, and on the other hand, Stephanie is a strategic builder when it comes to businesses, which play two and two and very well into each other.
Yeah.
She helps business owners build their strategic business roadmap. This is huge, especially as it also involves marketing in some portions of it. And this is her bringing it to the table to help them realize their vision. This includes group coaching for leadership and readiness, facilitating strategic planning workshops, resource realignment, advising, and implementation coaching with proven management system techniques to drive results. I'm very excited to have you, Stephanie, and dive into this conversation. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Sasha. I'm so excited that we get to have this conversation today.
Likewise. I mean, so much synergy between us.
It's true. I literally got chills when you started talking about how, marketing is such a critical through line for the business that I think is nobody really paid. Like it's just not enough known how the importance of marketing is such a through line to the actual business, and business strategy and growth is fundamentally built on top of marketing and those choices. So there is beautiful synergy here, and I'm excited to talk about business agility and resilience and flexibility and being able to pivot and,
Amazing.
adapting.
Yeah, totally. But before we jump into all of that, I'd like to start off by, getting a little bit of a background in terms of,
Yeah.
Why you started what you started. How did it all of a sudden just be that bulb in your mind and you're like, you know what, there's a gap for this. I got to do it and I got to support.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started this business, Empower Your Results, because I've worked in enterprise, I've worked in nonprofit, I've worked with small businesses, and there was this kind of consistent through line that I saw almost every kind of type of organization. And that through line was if there was real kind of lack of clarity on what we all were trying to achieve,
Which there
there
always
was,
is.
right, creates friction and misdirection and a lot of wasted resources. I'm passionate about, and what the other thing I saw was that leadership capability, meaning knowing how to manage people and also being a leader to provide inspiration and vision to to audiences or your team or your clients or whatever. That's really lacking for a couple of reasons, and we can dig way into that one. But for me, it's about I found this place, and it really comes down to businesses are known to shove 10 pounds of stuff into a 5-pound bag and expect that they're actually going to get the results that they think that they want.
I love that. Businesses are trying to shove 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag. It's absolutely correct.
And it's bonkers, right?
Yeah,
and it goes back to that, we're just going to have to do more with less. And it's like, nope, you're going to have to do the right things with less, right? So that you create the most value in the result. So it's not about doing more with less. It's doing the right things to deliver the value. And I think that's and that to me is a missing element inside of the management skill set that exists today, both from an entrepreneur perspective or to an enterprise division leader, that really needs to understand that. And so, I'm excited I saw this kind of piece of it. Mm-hmm. I also realized through my career and experience that I really don't work well inside of corporate environments. It's too political. There's too much, you got to create allies. You have to, it's not even diplomacy. It's Dungeons and Dragons. And I just don't have it in me to waste that time, because I feel like time is so precious in business. You don't have a lot of time. Yeah. Days are long, years are short. Yeah. And, organizations need to understand that this 1 week is going to go by in a blink of an eye, and this month will go by faster. Yeah. And if you're not keeping track of where you are, you're going to miss all of these opportunities to do what you set out to do, because you might be distracted by shiny objects or random opportunities coming in because you don't vet them well. You're just like, that sounds great. And so this is about helping organizations build better capabilities, habits, and behaviors to not do more with less, but do the right things with what they have to deliver the most value.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. So if I love how you called working for corporate Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm like automatically my head went to Game of Thrones immediately.
Oh yeah,
But it is like that. I
it
mean,
is.
like an enterprise company, we don't have to name them, but it was the same thing. I mean, and they politically correct called different departments a separation of like church and state, and I was
Correct.
like, well, I was like, it's a little more than just a church and state divide. It's heavier than that.
Yeah.
But you are right. I mean, it's especially when it's in an enterprise setting, it's very challenging to navigate certain things, and I think a lot of things are missed in terms of go to market because of the fact that
Yes.
there's too many, I'd like to say, egos in the kitchen, because it is let's call it what it is, right?
Correct.
So with that said, let's say company X comes to you.
Yeah.
Walk us through a little bit of the process in terms of like how that is. I mean, obviously it's a varying degree set up, I guess,
Sure.
based on industry, maybe what their goals are and so on. But I'm sure you have a little bit of like a structure or a template in place.
I do. So I spend usually a half an hour at first with them, and I have it's kind of a qualifying sheet where there's a series of questions that I go through because I want to make sure I'm pulling some of the right threads. And really, what I'm trying to understand is like what is the greatest pain they're suffering from.
Mm-hmm.
What did they interpret as their business challenge? What do they really kind of think they want? And so it's just a really quick kind of a quick assessment. I'm also poking at what I call readiness.
Yeah,
And are you ready for change? Right? Like,
I love
are
that.
you ready to do the work that it's going to take to get you to this new place? Because what got you here will not get you here.
Yeah,
Like, that's just like if you're trying to unlock a growth, if you're trying to expand into a market, if you're trying to scale your organization, what got you here is not going to get you there. And
and
I
not
need
to
to know.
interrupt you, but there's like increments of a business and their growth, and it's just like where, like to your point, where they are when they had the idea, they launched. Okay, what's next? And then is there more products or are there more services and so on? So it's an ongoing.
It's an ongoing, it's a continuum, and
Yes.
it's a journey that they are going through. Because again, just be like, I did this recent video on like ambiguity versus indecision,
Yeah.
and especially in enterprise organizations, and a lot of it is they use like you have to be comfortable with ambiguity,
Yeah.
but what they really mean is we don't make fast decisions, and
Yeah.
everybody's got to put their 2 cents in. And then we might eventually get to a close to consensus.
Yeah.
And then there's still going to be, Dungeons and Dragons on the backside of that.
Yeah.
And you see that kind of behavior in small businesses when they just don't know what they don't know, and they
Hmm.
don't know where to grow.
Do you feel
Um,
like that's more from like a fear standpoint?
It's two things to me. It's fear,
Hmm.
right? And it's also a lot of our really successful small business owners in America are like self-made entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I use self-made obviously loose in the sense of they went through the bootstrap or taking out a traditional loan and building this business for themselves. They probably don't come with an MBA.
Yeah.
They probably know only their industry really, really well, and they're not necessarily investing in the business model innovation or how technology can help innovate your business model. They're not necessarily keeping up with all of that stuff. And so I think there's a knowledge gap, and then there's a fear because you don't have a knowledge gap.
Yep.
And it's
You
like this
nailed it.
it's kind of a
Push and
chicken or the
pull.
egg kind of thing, but
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah. So interesting. So the types of businesses that you work for range anywhere from like small, medium to large. I mean, it's just across the
I
board,
can work.
right?
I prefer small to medium.
Yeah.
I think large super enterprise organizations. There's that is a slow moving machine, and
Yeah.
that's okay. But if you are not necessarily ready for change, then there isn't anything I'm going to be able to do to help you if you are not willing, as the leaders in the management team of that division or company, are ready to do that.
Yeah.
And so that's that. So I prefer kind of the, you know, 500,000 plus to maybe up to 50 million. I love that kind of sweet spot because that's where you find a lot of the successful and emerging businesses. I tend to work with, if you're on the entrepreneur ecosystem side of the
Yeah.
fence, I'm
Yeah.
working with funded and growth stage because they've got investment
Yes.
dollars.
Yes.
And they
Totally.
and they're ready to start operationalizing the organization because they're moving out of that startup. Everybody got to do a lot of stuff phase.
Yes.
And then it's kind of like, okay, now we got $1 million. We got $5 million. We have to now build this out.
Yeah.
And so that's where I come in when it comes to like the entrepreneur startup land. And then in the small business space, it really is that over 500,000 plus, because we need to know you've got product market fit and that you've been able to sell your product, and you have some existing systems that just may not be working for you.
Yeah.
That those are two kind of sweet spots. Most of the time, it's B2B services, and or B2B2C services. So marketplaces, things like that. I've got a pretty strong background in.
Yeah. I do
Yeah,
like the B2B space because even from a marketing standpoint, there's a lot more grit to get it to like the market. And it's a
yeah,
lot more, there's a lot more learning curves because it's a longer tail sales process. And it's really trying to understand not even just like the product market fit, but it's like, okay, so you've caught their interest, they've come in, what's the conversation? How do you get them over the ledge? And then it can run anywhere from like a 2 week to like a 6 months process for like a sale,
absolutely.
you know?
And it's interesting when you well, different types of organizations based on like maturity, product, audience, etc., is really interesting to me because I'm trying to remember my thought here, but it's related to like B2B sales is a very long process. And if you have a business owner or a CEO who comes from a sales background,
Mm-hmm.
they have very different expectations about what marketing should do and what ops should do and how they should play. So they're very sales oriented.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to get them to buy into like building a marketing engine. And then you've got the ones that have more of a tech or a product background, and they just think like sales and marketing is just a pain in the ass anyway.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
they need them, but they
Yeah.
also don't necessarily want them to say that they have like a real equal seat at the table. They want product, and technology to kind of architect and design the solution. But sales and marketing is what's going to building the right engine and knowing those journey points and like what can
Mm-hmm.
compel them, that behavior, the
Mm-hmm.
actions. That takes time,
Yes.
and
Yes.
there's a lot of impatience. And I see so many people investing in agencies or investing in hiring somebody, and then they just get rid of them after
Yeah.
3 to 6 months because like they didn't wave their magic wand and suddenly all these expectations were not met.
Yeah.
And so managing those expectations is really about education and trying to cultivate a sense of experimentation to help support the impatience. So it's
Yeah.
like, what are the experiments you can get to that allows you to stay on it without just saying like, I'm just waiting here and why haven't I heard anything?
Yeah,
And then being
totally.
upset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, there's a lot of impatience, and I like what you said with experimentation because when it comes to sales and marketing, especially with like a new company or even if it's not a new company, they've been around for
Mhm.
X amount of years, they've hit a plateau. It's like where do we need to optimize and rejigger to find out that sweet spot again? And it's like
Yeah.
a salesperson is only as good as their training, right? I mean, yes,
Yeah.
they can be good to know how to sell, but it's like then what is my how are you passing the baton on to the salesperson to be able to understand the education, get into the mind of the person who founded this company to really then craft it in a sales mentality to like take it to market.
Absolutely.
And
I
it
mean,
is a
spot on.
struggle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, what for you like is the tipping point when you do come into companies where there is kind of that like that pushback with like sales and marketing from an investment standpoint to really push them over the ledge that it is an investment and it's like I had somebody else on the podcast the other day and they were saying with small business sometimes it's the deciding factor of like do I take my kids on vacation for the summer or do I actually take half of that and I invest it in like sales and marketing or do I buy that new like refrigerator that we need or do I put it in sales and marketing. I mean, but that's the thought process of like a small business owner even if they
Yeah.
are at like x amount of like 500,000 plus or a million because
Sure.
they have people they're paying, right? But
Yeah.
what in your experience has been that sweet spot of that tipping point to get them to really have that aha moment?
That's I mean, great question. I would say For me, it's trying to, one, you have to you've got to persuade with the heart and the mind.
Yeah.
So it's right. So it's the balance of, um, I'm pretty clear on the sense of, if you want marketing to be something that your organization utilizes to help support your business, there is a certain amount of investment that is required, like as table stakes. And then there's other tiers based on what you want to grow and how fast you want to grow. Right.
Mhm.
And um, some small businesses kind of sit around a 2% of their total revenue.
Yeah.
Realistically, we'd like to see them at 5% because there's just more that can be done in building that out and building more.
From a budgetary
um,
standpoint, you mean, right?
yeah, from a
Mhm.
budget. This is about the investment.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, okay, if I'm saying you need to go from a 1% investment to a 2.5% investment, then I have a conversation with them about, let's talk about what this investment is going to be used for. Let's talk about how, what you can, like, I try to manage the expectations, but I also play into, like, if you got to spend money to make money. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
You have to spend marketing money to make more money. And so I do my best to try to explain that, this is really kind of average industry averages. I'm not asking you to consider something that's like out of the park. I'm asking you to think about, how do you right size the organization from a resource perspective to essentially also provide the support that the organization needs, meaning other teams,
Hmm.
sales, tech, whatever. They might need more investment because they can't meet your expectations. And so really it's about having kind of clear, candid conversations. And then it's in their ballpark. I can't force them to do anything.
Yeah, totally. I mean, in the end, they're just going to say, well, this is what, we feel comfortable doing. Because then, there's that experimentation phase, right? The testing and
Mm-hmm.
learning and kind of dipping in a little slowly to then go full speed ahead as well.
Yeah. And I think that, what I found is that, you know, businesses tend to, well, if you have a marketing background, like, it's not an argument, like, it's not even a hardcore discussion. It's just like, where do we start? Can we start small? Can we grow? What could that look like?
Yeah.
If you're having, like, I had a client in a sales led organization, and I went in and I did the deep stuff.
Yeah.
And when you looked at her P&L, right, what you discovered was that her compensation for her sales team was, I mean, I would be a salesperson for that business
Yeah.
because the comp was crazy.
Yeah.
But what she didn't realize was that, even because she was like, no, I want to pay them really well. I'm like, great. But you in their contract, it says you are responsible for the marketing and the delivering of leads. But you are eating at margin by giving them so much of a rev share on commission, right? That's eating away what your marketing dollars need to be to give them more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, I'm just telling you what the numbers are telling me. I can
Yeah.
I can read a P&L, and I can tell you, if what you tell me are your priorities, let me read your P&L, and I'll say, like, I think there's just not alignment here on what
Yeah.
you say and what you're doing, because where you put your dollars is where your real priorities are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
the more I talk about this, the more it's the crazy amount of synergy, like, in terms of like business and like, it's not just about marketing and it's not just about driving the leads, because it's like, once you can bring them into the system, your onboarding team could just fail, or your customer service team could just fail in terms of like setting them
Yeah.
up and so on and so forth. So it's so crucial, because, and it's crazy because at the end of the day, it always points back to like, oh, it's marketing's fault, or, they didn't
Mhm.
set it up right, or they didn't do it right,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth. But it's crazy.
And that's like, I've had a client who, I had to come in and I renegotiated their marketing relationship with an agency because, with this person's kind of idea was like, I'm spending a fortune and, like, I'm getting nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why don't I review the contract, and why don't I take a look at it, and I'll maybe go and talk to the vendor and see what's going on. And the reality was, like, she actually was spending almost nothing. But she was expecting, like, she was, let's say, a $500 a month investment,
Yeah.
but she was expecting a $5,000 a month service.
Yeah.
And so, like, that disconnect is a really difficult part to navigate. And so I find that when you work with me, there has to be some vetting about, are you really ready to do this
Yeah.
work?
Yeah.
I mean, we can get you through planning, we can get you through right sizing resources, but to move into
Yes.
understanding how to build the right habits
Yeah.
and introduce new capabilities, if you're not willing to do the work, then we just say let's go have a drink and celebrate the success that we've gotten to. But I'm not gonna feel like it's my job to constantly try to persuade a leader,
Yeah.
a business owner, to do what's in their best interests, and they continue to not do it.
Yeah. I like that
I,
you bring that up because specifically as it relates to small business and like the dipping of the toes in the, and I will go back to your word again, like the experimentation, the concept
mm-hmm.
of that, they invest like 500 to $1,000 and it's like, let's be honest. I mean, when you're spending that kind of money on like Facebook, Instagram, you're competing with somebody who's probably dropping like $10,000 in your same industry. So the like
Absolutely.
your ad to be seen across the board versus
Yeah,
somebody else's continues to drop down, right? And
absolutely.
you can't be happy with a one or two turnaround investment, but then it's like the cost per lead seems high because you're spending less and then you're not getting a return. You're not getting the same amount of impressions, so on and forth, so forth. It doesn't calculate. And marketers have a tendency to not know how to speak to the data and the analytics that come
Oh,
through.
yeah,
Or it should just be like, listen, I don't think we should be spending on these platforms. Let's think about other ways that we can generate business for you that are outside
absolutely.
the box. Maybe it's organic SEO. Maybe it's, what
Maybe
kind
it's
of,
trade shows.
maybe it's trade shows. What kind of things can we be attending where you have more of a return on investment for your dollars versus just sitting there spending $500 to get a measly like two or three leads in through the funnel, right?
What I find also fascinating in this kind of, as I'm working with organizations around business, operational excellence and business agility,
Yeah.
is this, the idea that like marketing is the solve of all problems, but it's the root of all problems.
Yeah.
And there's this, it's interesting that if you're not willing to invest in like the technology, if you're not willing to invest in like setting it up properly, that plays a role in this whole thing, which
Hmm.
is, are you setting, like to your point earlier about coming in and making there's a process and a foundation, and a foundation is usually what's your technical layer that you're going to be using to enable all of this,
Yes.
which I find really really interesting. And I like to see, I liked it. Well, like, let me tell you a story about this guy that I was working with, this client that I had. One of the conversations that we would have is like, where, he was definitely crawling up to retirement. And he was like, I want marketing to help this business. And I was like, well, what do you mean when you say marketing?
Yeah.
Right. And then he was like, well, basically he wanted to like replace sales with marketing. And I'm like, so first of all, like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
The second is that
He may never even have needed marketing. He might have just needed to like optimize his sales, but tell the
yeah.
story. Yeah.
And the fun part is when they're like, I have an idea for my marketing. I have an idea for my marketing. And then I say, well, tell me what your business goals are, because your marketing strategy should be driving your business goals and
Yeah.
driving revenue and supporting what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And if that's not happening, this is that huge disconnect of like marketing almost as like this playground that they want, like the ideas that they have.
Yeah.
And it's like, but those ideas may not be driving the results that you want. And there's this interesting thing about like, I got an idea, I got an idea, I got an idea. And then they struggle with this, like, my team can't keep up with me. I am an idea machine.
Yeah.
And my team can't keep up with me. What's up with them? And I literally have to look at them and say, I need you to go look in the mirror. And as Taylor says, hi, it's me. I'm the problem,
Yeah.
because you're the problem,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry to share this with you, but if you're not willing to share business goals, and you can't tell me what is important that you're going to invest money into this year, I don't know if I can help you with that piece of your business. I can
Yeah.
help you do other things, but if you're not willing to do that, that's not going to help you. And so this guy also, I tried to have candid conversations in private about, you're looking towards a retirement. So is this an exit? So are you really thinking about exiting? Because like you're saying, I want marketing, but you're trying to create a solution, but you're not really telling me what you really want to do.
Yeah.
And it took me a couple of meetings to say, like, yes, he was focused on what the exit would be for him. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a horse of a different color.
Yeah.
We're going to be making decisions based on, do you want to sell this to a competitor? Do you want to sell it to your employees? Do you want to wind it down. What do you really want here? And I think he wanted a stronger exit, but he wasn't willing to think about partnership or partnership to acquisition.
Yeah.
And so that was really fascinating in the sense of, just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's a good one. And just because you throw a gazillion ideas to your team doesn't mean that they suck.
Yeah.
And again, at the end of the day, it's about what leadership is choosing to prioritize. It's how management, whether they're the one and the same is fine, how they're allocating resources, and whether or not those priorities line up to the investments, and the people who are responsible for driving that work have access to the services and the resources and the support they need.
Yeah.
It's not complicated when we talk about it, but the human condition makes it really complicated.
Oh, yeah.
And so it always goes back to this. I embrace business
I want to
agility.
repeat that because that is so on point. The human condition is what makes it really difficult.
Yep.
It's so true. It's so true.
So for years it was digital transformation, and now it's business transformation. It's same,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But at the root of it, it's not about the technology you pick. It's not about the vendor you've chosen. It's not about the swag that you gave everybody.
Yeah.
Right? It's about how people feel about their job. It's about if they feel secure,
Yeah.
if they feel that they're in a safe space where they can articulate what they really think, right? Like that's a real thing. And some people are so afraid of losing their job because we're going to change stuff or we're going to transform some things that they become the resistors or the saboteurs. And so when you're working in any transformational project, it has nothing to do with the technology and has everything to do with the human condition inside of that organization and the cultural ethos of that organization to create the environment. Yeah, as a people, like a people led, it's like a people first leadership principle, right?
Yeah.
So people first leadership, customer centricity,
Yes.
engaged culture with flexible operations, driving value-based delivery. Those are the 5 domains of business agility. And if you can master some of the capabilities in there, you build the resilience so that you can adjust and adapt quickly for the pivot. Like there's that great story that you were sharing about the woman who during pandemic, she was selling bikinis, knew that probably wasn't going to work, pivots to a face mask.
Yeah.
Boom, explodes, gets some great contracts. That's what business agility is.
Yeah.
Right? And it's having the freedom, the flexibility, and the resilience to handle anything the market throws at you.
Yeah.
And it is rooted in behaviors. It's not rooted in tech. Yeah. Right? It's not rooted necessarily in marketing. It's rooted in the behaviors inside of the organization.
Absolutely. And it's not the concept of like, well, I'm not creative enough to be able to come up with something if I am in a situation like a pandemic or something, so on and so forth. It actually is, you are, because it's your business. You came up with something creative to develop that. So the agility of being able to pivot in a time of need will also come naturally. And to your point, it isn't marketing, it isn't tech, it isn't sales, it isn't anybody, but it could be the culmination of what you are also seeing from sales, marketing, the customer feedback, which is hugely and gravely important to be able to be listening to people and what they like and what they don't like, because you have pivoting like ideas that are coming from your client, from your customers, your clients, or whoever it is.
Correct. Like if and that's the other thing where I would say this is a great moment of intersection of business agility and marketing is you have to know your audience.
Yes.
You have to know who your customer is, and not just these kind of, woman this, man this, da 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 da, but like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Right? What's important to them? What are other things, like what are those affinities around them that can inspire that kind of resilience and pivot? And I think that's what's really fascinating is the lack I see in true understanding of their market, and they might know their market, but they may not actually know their customer really well.
No, most businesses think that they know their market, sorry, that they think that they know their customer, but they actually don't.
Mhm.
And then they spend all this money and time, and to your point, age, demographic, geographic, so on and so forth, but not really digging into what really makes somebody tick and what do they actually really want, you know? Um,
Yes. And the pain point that ultimately you want to help solve,
yeah,
can you find that kind of like what you want? Like what I want to do is help bring, I want more successful businesses and less failures,
yeah,
right? Why? Because 50% of small businesses fail by year 3. Okay. 90% of startups fail. 90%. In corporate world, if you were failing 90%, you would not have a job, right?
yep,
So why is the venture capital scene like cool with that?
yeah,
Right? There's a and there are ways to make this better.
yeah,
So I would love to see, for me, it's about more successful businesses and less failures so that we can have a bigger, thriving American economy.
yeah,
Like that's something near and dear to my heart. But the real root of it for me is that I want to help influence the next generation of workplace experiences and cultures so that people don't hate their jobs,
yeah,
don't want to, escape, that they recognize that what they're doing is something, they're part of a team and they're part of an organization that cares about their own humanity,
yeah,
doesn't see them as cogs, right? And so I would love to have a material impact on the way we embrace leadership and management, in the small business ecosystem, because 7% of small businesses will make it to a million profit.
yeah. It's terrible.
7%.
It's terrible.
So imagine if we could get 7 to 10%, what kind of absolute transformation we would have as a country,
Yeah,
right? And so that's what drives me. More successful businesses, happier business owners,
yep,
living their best life, right? With embracing the human condition and really mastering operational excellence. Like
yeah.
that is what drives me.
I mean,
And I love
amen,
planning.
amen. I mean, seriously, because I mean, what is it? I think it's like the last time I checked, I think, well, globally, small businesses make up like 75% of the GDP. And I think it's like 90% of the US economy is built on small businesses. That's a huge
Yes,
number.
there's something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's huge. And to
I
think
would say
about,
it's,
I
no, go
mean,
ahead.
yeah, I mean and the rest of the percentage are those that are like the big box, like enterprise. I mean, we're talking like Amazon, Target,
Yeah.
like
You're talking multinational, big organizations, and that's beautiful and lovely. And we need all of that.
yeah,
But, we've seen this massive cultural shift definitely since, pre and accelerated through COVID,
yeah,
which was, I don't want to be kind of a corporate, I don't want to live in corporate anymore. They're literally sucking the life out of me. I don't, like I I don't feel like it's just they want out. Like
yeah,
we're seeing this kind of exodus out of corporate.
yeah,
And we're seeing a lot of people who want to come and join the small business or the entrepreneurship space, but because they lack some of this education and knowledge gap, they're going to struggle,
yeah,
right? So like I volunteer for a entrepreneur startup called e for all,
yeah,
and it's specifically designed to help BIPOC communities understand how to take their idea, a concept, and then get it into at least like an MVP in the market.
yeah,
And it's wonderful to see all these ideas, right? But the challenge we see in some of these spaces is that they're trying to solve a problem of one,
yes,
and they're not necessarily going out and saying like, I see this problem everywhere,
yes,
right? And that becomes, so that's like that product market fit, but it's also the validation of just the idea and concept. And
absolutely,
that is a huge, like if you can get the product market fit, you exponentially shift your odds,
yeah.
like exponentially shift your odds, and
Yeah.
earlier the better.
It's so true because if you look at the difference between like an idea or a concept, whether it's a product or service that kind of takes off in such a little time, they have really focused beyond themselves. They have really
Yeah.
focused like of thinking this is a problem that I have. And don't get us wrong. I mean, every entrepreneur and every like founder and everyone that
Sure.
started something, obviously it came from either a pain point that they experienced themselves or a pain point that their friend or family or like relative
Mhm.
or whoever, but
Yeah.
it's then understanding what are the further pieces to the pain point that you can build on even more so just outside of the one, as you mentioned, person and that one pain point, because there's a multitude of it. It's not just
And
that
it's
one
also
vision.
the and it's also this kind of like ability to navigate feedback and accept it,
Yeah.
right? Like this other thing that you'll see is that people have an idea, maybe they've gotten a little bit of funding, and they've been able to like stand up maybe an MVP because they got friends with deep pockets or something, and that's great.
Yeah.
Except all of their customers are telling them it's not exactly what I need. It's not necessarily solving my problem. It would be great if it could do X, Y, or Z. And they're like,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, but that's not what this is. Right.
Yeah.
And then but what they should be doing is saying, say more.
1000%.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Say
They
more.
don't listen.
And then adapt your
And shift.
solution to the need of
Yes.
this ideal customer type, ICP, this ideal customer persona that you are trying to go to, and give them what they're telling you they really need. So they fall in love with their solution and they're unwilling to be flexible and adaptive to the solution, because they've fallen in love with their idea and their solution. So like that's another one that can be problematic. This is why I work with, if you're in the entrepreneurial landscape, you've got to be proven product market fit. You have to at least revenue generation just a little bit, so we've proved it can be sold,
Yeah.
and that you're ready and that you've got some money to kind of operationalize. Like that's that mark. But in the small business
Sweet
side,
spot.
it could be plateau, it could be brick wall, it could
Mm-hmm.
be all sorts.
Yeah.
But it's not about, it's coaching you through the behaviors that you need to allow yourself and your team to make these adaptations. It's not about me coming in and telling you what to do. This is about helping you discover new capabilities and growing skill
Yeah.
so that you are better positioned as the leader of your business, the CEO, the owner, whatever it is, to build a thriving, sustainable business that has a healthy culture, right? That has a lot of potential for either a good kind of like, maybe it's a steady state, lifestyle business, or you're able to prove it out enough that you can invest in taking it to an enterprise scale.
Yeah, totally.
And that to me is so like I like that space, and I
Well,
use
that's
kind
like
of
the
the
sweet spot space, you know? I mean,
yes,
that is the space of whether it's you survive or you die.
yep. And it's like I want to throw you a lifeline,
Yeah.
but you got to grab it and you got to crawl up the line.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna encourage you, and I'm gonna coach you, and I'm gonna give you feedback, and I'm gonna give you tools, and I'm gonna give you lots of attention to get you to a plan. But executing that plan is up to you and your team.
Yeah.
And I can coach you through that, because it is good to have those external accountability mechanisms in place so that like it's just like when you go to the gym. It's a lot easier if you like a personal trainer waiting for you at the gym at four
Yeah.
o'clock
Then
rather
going
than like I'm
yourself.
going to go to the gym at 4 o'clock,
Yeah,
right?
for
You got to
sure. I
show
mean,
up.
totally. You have to show up because if you have that in your being of like the respect that you've made an appointment with somebody else, then you're going to keep that appointment and you're going to go, right? But
Yep,
sometimes we tend to not have that respect for ourselves if we don't have somebody at the other end waiting for us and we're like, I can just cancel and show up another day, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And that is not, and that's an example of you're not you're not respecting your own needs, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we do need external accountability mechanisms, right? So like I kind of think of it as like either you need external scaffolding,
Yeah.
or you might have really well developed internal scaffolding.
Yeah.
It just depends, but everybody needs motivation, and accountability is not a negative thing. And humans are afraid of
Yes.
it. They are
Yeah.
massively afraid of it. And they are so afraid of it that they avoid it at all costs.
Yeah.
This is why, and we also approach accountability with, like, like this,
Mm-hmm.
like offensiveness of like, well, why isn't this done?
Yeah. So
Right?
true.
Why isn't this done?
Yeah.
Right? And then people are afraid when it could be like, hey, um, part of the plan, like you were supposed to kind of deliver this so that this person could work on this. What happened?
Yeah.
Is everything okay?
Well, then that goes back to the roadmap of what are your goals and how do you want to achieve them? And is there a
And
roadmap in place?
exactly. And leader, like managing operations, there's like a lot of these pieces, but when I think about the future of work and the future of leadership, I think about it needing to incorporate like three things, which is trauma informed. Like you need to be trauma informed, empathy led, and accountability driven.
Love it.
And I want to help people embrace accountability as not a bad thing, but a good thing.
Yeah.
And but we're going to have to shift some of the culture inside the organization, because usually it's just like fear, right? Like there's just all this fear about, oh my God, I missed a deadline, or this was bad, or this test failed. Like you have to be comfortable with risk and failure. You have to have a certain amount of tolerance if you're going to play in this game.
Yes.
And if you struggle with that, then you're going to create a culture where people are going to eventually just kind of close up, and they're just going to basically like do what they're told, and they're not going to contribute their value.
Yeah.
And that's a risk. So I believe in, healthy cultures where we engage people together, people first leadership, responsive customer centricity, flexible operations, right? You have a roadmap. I have this former coworker. He was like, it's not a suicide pact.
Yeah.
He was like, it's not a suicide pact.
Yeah.
It's just a plan.
Yeah.
And you got to be willing to, like, on a quarterly basis, you can adjust.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, these quarters go by really fast.
Yeah.
And you're going to hit 4 and wonder, man, we had all these ideas and goals that we just didn't accomplish, but we got this one thing done.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the thing that mattered the most.
Yeah.
It was probably the thing that was the easiest to get done with almost no resources.
For sure. Yeah.
Right.
That's what they're going to do.
So my job is to help empower your results with business agility, thinking about the human condition, coaching you through it, and helping you design a roadmap that's going to make your dreams come true. Right. I love that. I don't know if it's Tony Robbins or whoever says it, but I love this question of like, what's the difference between a dream and a goal? A plan.
Yeah.
Because a dream is just a dream, but you can make a dream come true.
It's so true.
But you got to be willing to do the work, but you kind of need to know the steps or the little things you got to do to get there. And it takes, yes, you have to step out of the working in the business to work on the business. And this is another thing that is really anchored in my practice. You have to step away to work on the business. You need to be the drone above everything, looking at the horizon, seeing what's coming ahead. And you need to be thinking about 6-12 months from now and making the decisions today that are going to be revealed a year from now. Right?
Yep.
And that is kind of a missed nugget with a lot of our folks here, because they don't understand operational systems and working inside of an organization. It needs to be a rhythm. You're building that flywheel, if you will.
Yeah, it's never ending. And I love that you talk about like the one thing that people want to do is the easiest thing to just get it off. It's because they fear doing the one that's going to take the longest. And I was listening to an episode, I don't know if you know Ed Milet. He has a great podcast. But he always said, just imagine what it would be like to wake up in the morning, get rid of the one task that you have that you fear the most, and then breathe through the rest of the day, and then do all the little small ones, because it's not going to take as long and it's not going to take as much from you. And then that will just be a catapult of wanting to do those first thing every time to get them out of the way and just continue.
And that's a new habit.
Creating a new habit.
It's just a new habit.
Yeah.
And part of that is, I mean, you're spot on.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. I will say, my practice isn't, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
But there are like I've broken elements down where people can kind of get in and dip their toe in. But it's really about helping more businesses be successful, more successful businesses and less failures.
Yeah.
Because
that's what we need.
We have to change the game.
Yeah.
If we don't change the game, small business America is going to continue to struggle.
Yeah.
If we don't change the game, we're gonna see more people doing exodus out of corporate life, trying to jump into entrepreneurship, and they're going to fail
and go back.
And then they're going to go back. And then what is their mental health going to be like?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
right.
The cycle of,
That's just, everything is intersected, right? That's the intersectionality of it all, right?
Yeah.
Your business, you need to know where your business needs. You got to know where you want to take your business. You got to know a little bit of what that end game looks like.
Yeah.
Reverse engineer it. Create big milestones. right?
Absolutely.
Then just focus on the next maybe 6-12 months.
Yeah.
And the working on the business and in the business. So a lot of times startup CEOs and even small business entrepreneurs, they tend to work in the business because they're comfortable.
Yeah.
They
That's true.
work less on the business because they're not comfortable, or they don't necessarily know what they need to be doing, or they're unwilling to do what they know they should be doing. So they just jump back into the
Yeah.
working in the
Yeah.
business.
That's so true.
And so a client that I worked with last year, I asked her recently, I was like, okay, so you've really shifted your working in and on the business. Like, what's your ratio? And she was like, I was probably 70% in the business, 30% on the business when we first started.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, she was 60% on the business, 40% in the business.
That's great.
So she's moved it in the right
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
And she saw a 27% increase in revenue year over year. And she made it through year 3.
Wow. That's
Right?
incredible. Yeah.
So like those are the little things where like she was willing to listen and do the work, right? She picked and prioritized what she felt she could do and handle. But even if you have 3 priorities and you can only afford one, pick the one that's going to deliver the most value and just go in.
Yeah. That's
right?
so true.
And it's like, stop shoving 10 pounds of stuff into a
Yeah.
5-pound
I love
bag.
that. I love
People,
that.
stop it.
Yeah. That's
It like doesn't
amazing.
work.
No, it
It's not
doesn't.
about doing more with less. It's
Yeah.
doing the right things with what you have.
Exactly. Doing the right things with what you have is so key, because people tend to focus on the wrong things so many times. So many
And
times.
we know it's the shiny object syndrome, or you get an email that introduces you from a friend to this person who they're like, oh, they do this thing. It could be really cool for you. And you're like, sure, I'll take a 15 or 30-minute meeting and introduce. And they're
Yeah.
trying to pitch you on a whole thing. And if you don't have the discipline
Yeah.
or the system in place to like vet all of that incoming in, right? So in the book Good to Great,
Yeah.
right? They talk
Yeah.
about the hedgehog principle, where it's like the 3 questions.
Yeah.
And so Jim Collins is like, if you put everything through the 3 questions, and if there's one no, get rid of it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. That's so
Right?
true.
And that's a really important lesson, that if businesses learned how to create a good vetting system for inbound and ideas, and knew how to bump it up against the goals that they're trying to accomplish and whether or not that would actually help them achieve their goals, it gets really quick and easy to know, like, hey, thank you for the introduction. Now's not a really great time for me. Why don't we talk again in 3 months?
Yeah.
Or, hey, this just is not aligned with my business goals for this
And
year.
be okay to
Happy
say
to
that.
continue a
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Be
It's
totally
okay to say no.
Yeah. Thank you.
And you don't have to say yes to everything. And I believe in ruthless focus.
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow, this was so good. This was so good, Stephanie. Amazing. I could spend hours. We
I
have to
know.
do
It
this
would be
again and
fun.
talk more.
Because we are so connected.
Yeah,
It's
this is
amazing.
fantastic. I love this.
Yes.
Well, can you tell everybody where they can find you and connect with you?
Absolutely. So empoweryourresults.com is my website, and you can find me on Facebook. I have a group page called Empower Your Results you can follow. I'm also Stephanie Cordmiller on LinkedIn and Facebook. Feel free to reach out there. LinkedIn is really kind of my primary channel for social engagement, and I've got some free trainings and some other things that are available through my site, that if people want to learn more about business agility, they can. And if they want to learn about like the 3 myths CEOs tell themselves the most, 3 myths that CEOs tell themselves the most that are not true.
Yeah. Guys,
So I'm like
get
basically
those free
debunking
resources. They are amazing. I mean, get as much as free stuff as you can to jump in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's super important. Have that light bulb go off in your head just to kind of, steer the ship. But before we go, this has been incredible. But I did
Thank
want
you.
to see if we could leave the audience with something. What are the 3, to your point, either 3 or 4, or what are the 3 most important things if somebody is teetering on this, where they're like, I need somebody, it's do or die right now? What can they be asking themselves to really take that next step forward?
Yeah. Hang on one second real quick.
Okay.
Let me just pause. All right. Say that question one more time.
What are the 3 things or 4 things or 5 things to kind of give somebody the advice where they're sitting in a position where it's do or die, to really ask themselves, questions, or to think about, what is going on in their business to take this next step forward, where it's crucial
Absolutely.
for them to take that next step
So
forward?
I would say 2 big things are, let's look at employee and customer churn. right? Are you keeping your customers, and are you keeping your employees, right? If you're not keeping your customers, you're not serving them well. If you're not keeping your employees, you're definitely not serving them well, right? So those are two critical things, because trying to replace employees and onboard new ones is far more expensive than trying to make your existing employees comfortable, safe, and happy, so that you can pull out the loyalty, the commitment, the dedication, and the skill, right? So like that goes to what's happening on the retention end of your business, right?
Absolutely.
The other piece is, if you are clear about what you want for your business, but you don't know how to get there, let's have a conversation. If you are struggling with this churn problem, let's have a conversation. If you feel like you as the owner or the CEO are so burnt out and drowning that you cannot like breathe anymore, let's have a conversation. Those are some really big pieces. You know, if you are ready to kind of expand, grow, or scale a little and operationalize for efficiency, right? Or maybe you want to improve your margin, give me a call. Let's have a conversation, right? Because this is all about the levers in your business that you are toggling to get you the results you want, right? We all know that you can make more revenue off of renewals and upsells of an existing customer base than constantly trying to feed the beast on top.
Totally.
Right? So I would say, and it goes back to how important marketing is to your business, because all of these touch points, like all of these kind of transitional pieces, are directly impacted by your marketing and sales function and capabilities.
I mean, even when you're talking about the churn of like customers, of like your employees, it's the same thing, guys. When it comes to like marketing, if you have an issue with people signing on and churning with an X amount of time, there is a grave issue right there, which relates back to what Stephanie is talking about. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this has been fantastic, Stephanie. I
Thank
can't wait
you,
to have
Sasha.
you on again.
Yeah, I can't wait. Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about some case studies or other things
let's do
related to
next
that.
time
But
for sure.
yeah, but you know, business agility is not like Scrum.
Yes.
You can use some tools in that, but like business agility is about capabilities and skills that you learn to embrace to help you become more agile in the sense of how you respond to the things around you.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic for that last comment. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you so much.
We'll be on here again soon.
Yeah, I can't wait.